Lesson 1-1, Expressions and Formulas. Your objectives are to use the order of operations to evaluate expressions. We're going to be plugging in numbers for variables and evaluating using the order of operations. And number 2, we're going to use formulas, geometry formulas mostly. Okay, so some vocabulary that you need to know at the beginning of the year. A variable is a symbol, usually a letter, and it's used to represent an unknown quantity. So a variable really is taking the place of some value. An algebraic expression is any expression that contains a variable. Constants, I just think of these as a number. So anytime you see a number without a variable, that's the constant. And the coefficient is always the number in front of the variable. It's being multiplied by the variable. So if you look at my example here, 5b minus 9, 5 is the coefficient of that term, b, the letter, is the variable, and 9 is our constant, minus 9. Okay, here's a reminder of the order of operations. The order of operations tell us which order, I guess, to perform our operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, among others. So the order of operations, you always want to start with the grouping symbols first, and you can see these as brackets, braces, or parentheses, and the rule is to work from the inside out. Step number 2, you're going to evaluate any powers. We're talking about exponents here. If you see them, make sure you do that next. After that, if you have multiplication and division, you need to go from left to right. And finally, your very last operation would always be to add or subtract, and you need to work those from left to right too. Okay, so here's example 1. We have the algebraic expression m plus, in parentheses, n minus 1 squared. The value of m is 3, and n equals -4. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug these values in for the variables and then use the order of operations to find our answer. Okay, so if we have m is 3, I'm going to replace it there, plus, I'm just going to follow the original expression here. Then we have parentheses. Instead of n, I'm going to plug in the value of n, -4 minus 1 in parentheses squared. Okay, so there's our expression. Now we've replaced the variables with their values. Now, following order of operations, what should I do first? The parentheses. So we've got 3 plus, now in the parentheses, I have -4 minus 1. That's -5, and that's squared. Okay, number 2, the next order of operation is the power. So I'm going to keep rewriting my expression here, evaluating one thing at a time. 3 plus -5 in parentheses squared. That power means use -5 as a factor twice. So it means -5 times -5, or -5 squared. That's positive 25. And then 3 plus 25, our last operation. Add them together, we get 28. There's your answer. All right. Letter B, let's try this one. We have a fraction here. We have 3 variables this time, a, b, and c. A cubed plus 2bc divided by c squared minus 5. Same thing, we've got the value. A is 2, b is -4, c is -3. So we're going to plug in those numbers in place of the variables and evaluate to get our answer. Okay, so I'm going to start with the numerator. A is 2, so I've got 2 to the power of 3 plus 2 times b is -4 and c is -3. These are all being multiplied together. Divided by c squared minus 5. Okay, c is -3. It's very important that we put the negative values in parentheses. This is -3 squared, so it means -3 times -3. And then we're going to subtract 5. Okay, so what I would do here is evaluate the numerator first and then your denominator. So on top, I need to start with the power. Okay, so even though I've used parentheses here, the parentheses show multiplication. That doesn't mean a grouping symbol. We're just multiplying those numbers. So I'm going to start with the power. I don't have any grouping symbols. I'm going to start with 2 to the 3rd power. That's 2 times 2 times 2. Multiply 2 3 times and we get 8. plus, now I'm going to do the multiplying in this step as well, just because I am going to do 2 steps in one here. I need to go from left to right, so if I do 2 times -4 times -3, that gives me 24, positive 24. Now, did I have to go left to right? Not really. I mean, I can multiply in any order using the commutative property, so I could have said -4 times -3 is positive 12, 2 times 12 is 24. Okay, I'm going to save the addition for later, and then on the bottom of my fraction in the denominator here, I need to evaluate the power first. -3 squared is -3 times -3. That's positive 9, and then I'm going to subtract 5. Okay, now, on top and bottom of our fraction here, we have addition, we have subtraction. Let's simplify this fraction. So 8 plus 24, that gives me 32. Divided by, a fraction bar just means divided by, 9 minus 5, that's 4. And now my last step is going to be to divide. 32 divided by 4 gives me 8. Okay? Now, some of you might be saying, we didn't really follow the order of operations here because I added 8 plus 24 and I subtracted 9 minus 5, and then after that I divided, and that's not what the order of operations say. Well, the order of operations are a little different when you're dealing with fractions. You need to evaluate the numerator as one expression, the denominator as another expression, and then always your last step is going to be to simplify your fraction. So we worked on the top, we worked on the bottom separately, and then your last step, because 32 over 4 simplifies, you're going to reduce it or divide it and get 8. That's how you deal with those fractions. Okay. And my last example here, we're going to use a formula, not really anything different, but this is an example of a problem that would apply to geometry when you would need to plug in values for variables. So the formula for the area of a trapezoid is A equals 1/2 h times, in parentheses, b sub 1 plus b sub 2. H represents the height, and b sub 1 and b sub 2 represent the measures of the bases. Find the area of the trapezoid shown below. So the height of the trapezoid is 10 inches, and the two bases are the parallel sides, 16 inches and 52 inches. Let's use the formula here and plug in our values. So area is what we're trying to find. It equals 1/2 times the height, which is 10, and then times, in parentheses, base 1 plus base 2. So it doesn't matter which order you go in here, I'm going to go 16 plus 52. Okay, now let's do our math. Let's simplify using the order of operations. The order of operations say do the parentheses first, so I'm going to simplify 16 plus 52 because those are in grouping symbols. All right, 16 plus 52. That gives me 68. And if you don't want to, you don't have to use parentheses anymore. What we're doing here is multiplying. So now I have 1/2 times 10 times 68. Area equals, and you can multiply these in any order. It's totally up to you. It's your choice. So if I want to take half of 68, that gives me 34, and then I'm going to multiply by 10. So my area should be 340, and I'm going to label it as inches squared. Anytime you have area, you're going to use your units, and we're talking about units squared here, so inches squared. 340 inches squared. Okay, and finally, I'd like you to try one problem on your own here to check for understanding. I'm going to check this problem tomorrow in class, so make sure that you try it on your own now and complete it, and then bring it with you with your completed notes tomorrow in class, and we'll see if you get the correct answer.